You're in the 06010.
Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus Football, presented by NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. My name is Daniel Dopp, here with Stephania Bell and Field Yates, getting ready to recap what was a crazy Week 3. Guys, another crazy week in the NFL. Stephania, unfortunately, more injuries. Fields, we had a bunch of insane things happen, I feel like, this week. We're going to get into it. Obviously, a bunch of underperforming stars, as well as maybe the resurgence of Andy Dalton and the Carolina Panthers, baby.
Baby, survivor pools toast after yesterday. And when you said a bunch of insane things happening, I wasn't sure if that meant that you only watched Malik Nabers yesterday. Because
Stop it.
That dude's ridiculous. He might be the part owner of the Cleveland Browns after what he did yesterday, right off of, what is it, Lake Erie, the Browns play right next to? Incredible performance from him. What a star the Giants have. A lot of other gaps for them to fill, but a big win yesterday for the Giants to improve to 1-2.
Stephania, rest of season. Malik Nabers or Juwan Jennings? All right, we'll save it. We'll get into the 49ers love because he was unreal.
I didn't even get a chance to breathe. And
I'm
we
so
had to
sorry.
Throw a 49ers
I'm sorry.
dig in there.
It wasn't a dig. He was unbelievable this week.
Ultimately it's a dig.
Well, I'm so sorry.
Because despite that performance, we all know what happened. But I could have told you Juwan Jennings was a star.
You could have. I think you probably did tell us that coming into the week. Yeah, we got a couple of guys that you got to set up for success. All right. Let's not waste any more time. Let's just dive right into it. Our Week 3 recap here on Fantasy Focus.
Let's go.
And we're going to start with a Sunday night performance.
The Chiefs only play dramatic games now, huh?
Seriously.
Well, they're all in primetime.
Well,
So
yeah, that's
it's
true.
like entertainment.
That's
high
true.
entertainment.
I really don't know if the Chiefs play a single 1 o'clock game this year.
I know. I don't.
I'm not even sure that they do.
I don't think they
That's what happens when you're a team that they're a dynasty. This is what happens. But oh my gosh, what a finish this was last night. But the Chiefs just find ways to win. I have so much respect for the way that they say pressure makes diamonds. The Chiefs, when the pressure rises, they say, we got this. We're cool.
So that's great for NFL field.
Oh yeah, well, let's talk fantasy.
But let me ask you this question about fantasy. And we kind of talked about this coming into the show today. Like, we're diving into Week 3. There's enough games that have been played that it's like, I got some questions.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes. We still got 2 Monday Night Football games left. So 4 teams to play still Monday Night Football that's going to still impact where these guys land in Week 3. Patrick Mahomes, quarterback 13, outside the top 12 again. And Travis Kelce, thank the Lord he scored some fantasy points, but tight end 14.
I mean, some fantasy points.
Am I allowed to be pissed if I'm a manager of either one of these guys?
100%, yes, you absolutely can be. Here's the question I think we have to ask with Patrick Mahomes is there... He's going to have boom weeks for sure. But should your mentality going into your fantasy matchup week in and week out be that I have Patrick Mahomes, therefore I have a decided edge at quarterback over my opponent? Because for a few years, the answer was you have a decided edge over your opponent by a lot.
Yes.
Now you don't. Like, legitimately, going into the week, there are a few quarterbacks that I would 100% say I have the edge over the person who has Patrick Mahomes.
Yep.
Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. I think you make a case for a guy like Jaden Daniels already, which is crazy to think. So I think with Patrick Mahomes, the question isn't, am I starting Patrick Mahomes or am I not? He's the best player on the planet, maybe going to go down as the greatest ever by the time it's all said and done. I'm not here to tell you, yes, I'm benching Patrick Mahomes. But I'm telling you from a mindset perspective, as somebody who rosters Patrick Mahomes in a couple of different leagues, my mindset is, you know what? I have Patrick Mahomes, but in my brain, he's like the 8th best quarterback on the board this week, as opposed to the 2nd or 3rd best quarterback on the board this week.
Yeah, that's.
But you should absolutely be disappointed. I don't believe, this year specifically, I do not believe, and you guys let me know if I'm wrong. We talked about this going into the season. Hey, is there a chance that Patrick Mahomes has QB1 overall upside? No chance.
Yeah, I take back the 15% that I said.
17.5 fantasy points has not yet been reached in 3 games. Guys, it used to be Patrick Mahomes, did you get 30 out of him?
Right.
Now you do anything for 20 points, Stephania.
It was usually Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. We're like the two with maybe a Lamar Jackson on the side. And now I don't feel like he's in that conversation at all. And if you saw yesterday or last night or whenever it was, because it's all
it all bleeds together. Yeah.
When you saw there was one time where he went to run and he got his foot caught in the turf, and everybody held their collective breath. And he even talked about it afterwards. He said his foot stuck in the turf, but
Turf
he was
monster got
fine.
him. Yeah.
That is the kind of thing that will make them never want to do a quarterback sneak again. They've been away from it ever since he hurt his knee.
Yeah.
And I think there's a sense of like preservation of Patrick Mahomes and not running. You used to think you could get decent run yards out of him. Now, once in a while, to make the necessary yards to get a first down, he will do what is necessary. But I don't think of him as running quarterback at all. So then you're stuck with whatever the passing game is on that day.
Why don't you bring that up? Because at the end of last night's game, when they had to take knees, I want to just say I empathize with all of you out there that might lose your fantasy matchup because Mahomes took 3 knees for negative 13 yards.
Yeah.
He was trying to obviously
Really
kill some
drop it
time,
back.
too,
Right.
Yeah.
because the Falcons still had some timeouts to work with there. To be incredibly clear, and I don't think anybody is interpreting what we've said differently, Patrick Mahomes is the best player on the planet by far. You can be, and we talk about how bad quarterbacks can be good fantasy quarterbacks. The best quarterback on the planet can also not be an elite fantasy quarterback option. Right now, that's not what we have with Patrick Mahomes. And because of what they have in place around him, and without a whole lot of resources to get a whole lot better, I don't believe that changes week in and week out. There are going to be boom weeks. He's still Patrick Mahomes. But I don't believe for the rest of this season, if we had to have a debate like Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson, the person who has to make the case on behalf of Patrick Mahomes is fighting a very, very uphill battle.
No, absolutely. And I actually, you mentioned this. I actually think it's harder at the tight end spot if we talk about Travis Kelce. Like at quarterback, I can maybe say, boy, do I want to start Derek Carr or do I want to start Jaden Daniels? Maybe I was able to grab him off of waivers. Like there might be some options you have at quarterback, but I'm not benching Patrick Mahomes even when that happens. At tight end field, there's definitely no one. Like, who are you going to play right now with the way the tight end position is going over Travis Kelce?
I mean, the problem is probably nobody. Again, if you're the rare
really doesn't
person
feel
that
good,
drafted
though.
Brock Bowers, like maybe, but Brock Bowers had kind of a quiet day yesterday himself, just 3 catches. Yeah. So I think that I was talking about this with our producer Tyler before the show. Is like my theme in a lot of the conversations we're having right now is not like this guy's been bad, bench this player. Especially at the single starter spots, quarterback and tight end, where there are scant options. My advice is, or my takeaway is, I just want you to know if you're mad, you're allowed to be mad. And if you used a top 35 pick on Patrick Mahomes, on Travis Kelce, or Patrick Mahomes for that matter right now, it has not been close to worth it. There have been so many other options that would have been much better uses of your time. So, yeah, it's okay. The Chiefs are the champs. If I had to pick someone to win the Super Bowl this year, I'm still picking the Chiefs.
Yep.
I'm going out on a limb there. But for fantasy purposes, it's a different construct right now. There's one player in the Chiefs offense, that is an auto start with the expectation of him being great, and that's Rashee Rice. Because, man alive, is he great.
Yeah. Ideally, we get Isaiah Pacheco back without being too much time.
Yeah, I wouldn't even, I would just say, since we're talking about them, you're talking about a 2 to 3 month recovery, and you're talking about a running back coming off an injury similar to what Tony Pollard had. So I don't know that for fantasy purposes, I would be holding out great expectations. Like, he might serve the Chiefs really well, but when he initially comes back, assuming that everything goes well and he can, I don't know that out of the gate, you're getting the Isaiah Pacheco that you had when the season began.
I mean, we saw the running back by committee at the running back spot for the
Last night was every fantasy analyst analysis during the week.
Yep.
Hey, it's going to be running back by committee. I think Carson Steele will lead them in carries. He'll probably have the most opportunities, and none of them should be started. And the answer was Carson Steele had 8.4 fantasy points. So that to me is the state of the state with the Chiefs right now. The Falcons are an interesting team in this regard. There were relatively nothing wrong with not a terrible night from Bijan. 13.2 fantasy points. There were definitely bigger duds at the running back spot. It was fine. They could not run the football against the Falcons, especially when it mattered against the Chiefs, especially when it mattered late in the game. Drake London's a fascinating one.
Yeah.
He had 9 targets last night. That's good. Back-to-back games with a touchdown for Drake London. It has happened late in both games for Drake London. He had a wide open touchdown early last night, but then he hummed on the in the fourth quarter. That was when he kind of really got going. I think there are 2 ways to look at it. Yes, it's been better in the past couple weeks. No 2 ways about that. I still think there is a level up for Drake London. I do believe that firmly. I think there is a way for the Falcons to saturate him more with targets. I'm not trying to sit here and tell you that they can't throw the football to other players, but we're still seeing more from the complementary pieces than I anticipated.
A lot of Darnell Mooney targets.
A lot of Ray McLeod.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to sit here and say wow, the Falcons have not utilized Drake London at all. It's definitely better compared to where it was last season after a quiet week one. I am simply noting that I thought it would be more Drake London than it has been up to this point.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. There are basically three guys that we're looking to start week in and week out here, and it's Bijan Robinson, who, like you said, it was not a great performance, but it didn't crush you this week. It's still 13.2 fantasy points. Drake London, who got 9 targets, as like you had mentioned, and
That's
then Kyle
great.
Pitts.
You'll take 9. I just thought it could be even. Like I think I really believe this in my brain. The Falcons could shift things a little bit, and their offense, I think, needs some shifting right now, and highlight Drake London a bit more.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Field Yates. All right, let's move ahead and talk about Lions and the Cardinals. This Lions backfield is exactly what they thought they were going to be.
Boy.
I
got that wrong on David Montgomery.
Well, to be fair, you got some other ones
Wow.
right that we're gonna land on, Stephania. But these two guys looked great this last week, and it helped, I think, and it hurt fantasy managers that they lost Sam Laporta in this one. We did not get the same kind of passing game usage. Amon-Ra St. Brown, still Amon-Ra St. Brown. J-Mo, not nearly as involved as he had been in previous weeks. It was really the tale of the two running backs, Stephania, with Sam Laporta going down. What do you have to potentially tell us on his injury?
If you saw, his foot got caught under defender, rolled inward. We call that an inversion maneuver, and essentially an inversion sprain. Afterwards, the word on him was that he had this low ankle sprain. So not the high ankle sprain that we talk about when the foot gets rotated outwards, but this is a low ankle sprain. And I think it's just, we're going to have to wait and see. You know, Monday's a big evaluation day, see how extensive the damage is, but probably could have been worse.
One thing that's positive is they play Monday night against the Seahawks, so an extra day to be able to rest there. But this offense kind of looked like what we expected the offense to look like from a fantasy game perspective. Not really a whole lot of takeaways. I'm still trusting Jameson Williams, even though he had a tough one.
Yeah, I would say the question is, and again, the injury sucks, and that impacted things a little bit. But Daniel, I know you watch these guys as intently as anybody that I know. Prior to the injury, still wasn't the Sam Laporta we were expecting.
Nope.
So, same conversation. I want people to rack your brains with this thought. I'm not sitting here to tell you that when Sam Laporta is available, you shouldn't be starting him. I just want you to know that you, like those of us who have him, are allowed to be frustrated. There are a lot of tight ends. We'll talk about one that didn't see a target yesterday in just a little bit. But yeah, Sam Laporta, I thought this might have been more. But for now, it remains the Amon-Ra plus the two backs with some J-Mo as well show in Detroit.
I totally agree with you, and I think you said it earlier when you were talking about both of the Chiefs. There's going to be a handful of guys where I used to go in thinking I had a decided advantage over my opponent. Sam Laporta was one of those guys as well that, man, I'm locked up at the tight end spot over whoever my opponent has. You're kind of re-racking my brain to justify or to rebalance expectations, I guess.
If you go into the matchup thinking yeah, I have Sam Laporta, that's nice, but it's close to a coin toss with the person who has, just as an example, Jake Ferguson, that'll make you feel better than if you go and being I've got Sam Laporta, I'm dusting my opponent no matter who it is.
Yeah.
Cardinals side, Daniel, I think you deserve flowers for this, and I just plant the seed in people's brains for future weeks, because it could be Kenneth Walker III next week if he's available.
Yeah.
You're playing the Lions, get used to a tough day at the office for your running back.
Running backs are tough. Have not had a running back finish inside the top 20 so far this year, and this game was brutal, unfortunately, for James Conner. 9 carries for only 17 yards and 1 catch for 8 yards in this one. Running backs, this is what they do. They just...
The numbers?
Yeah, bring it.
Kyron Williams, 18 rushes for 50 yards.
That's low.
Less than 3 per carry with a touchdown, so that helps. Last week, Rachaad White, and he did leave the game, but he had 10 carries for 18 yards.
Not good.
And 9 for 17.
9 for 17.
James Conner. So talk about tough sledding. Keep that in mind next week if we have Kenneth Walker III or Zach Charbonnet. You might see a decreased projection relative to what you normally expect.
Yeah, you've heard us talk about whenever you see the Commanders, be able to be excited to play your wide receivers against them, or basically anyone against them. This is one of those situations where maybe lower expectations against the Lions running game because it has continued to look good. Stephania, on the other side of this one with the Cardinals, obviously we saw a great game from Marvin Harrison Jr. I shouldn't say great game.
It was a 5 for touchdown.
Yeah, it was a fine game.
Yeah.
Started out hot, and then it kind of tailed off towards the end. But big thing for me, again, the tight end position, Trey McBride.
Well, he was hurt.
Yep.
Ended up being evaluated for a concussion. Now, it was late enough. Jonathan Gannon just said that all he knew was that he was being evaluated for a concussion. Okay. So what the result of that was, but we did not see him return after that. And again, your favorite term, nonlinear. So you cannot assume. And we had a few of those this week where it will be throughout the course of the week. We're going to have to see what kind of progression the athlete makes.
Yeah. It's going to be tough with that one. Obviously, this offense already runs basically through Marvin Harrison Jr. and a handful of those wide receivers if they need to. I was hoping Trey McBride would get more involved, but tough one there on the day. If you had either one of the tight ends in this game, just brutal.
Yep.
All right, let's move ahead and talk Ravens and Cowboys. You know what? Let's just keep this tight end train rolling. Why not? It's just Miseryville over here.
But there is no I don't have any takeaway here. I mean, my takeaway is that sucked. Like, I thought I had, I did not realize my tight end was in a bye yesterday.
Yeah, if you have Mark Andrews, that's who we're talking about. How many targets did Mark Andrews have, Field?
0. I don't know if Tyler, our producer, has the
0.
Clay tweet from last night. But on top of this, so 0 targets means, of course, 0 catches and 0 fantasy points. But how about this? He played 1/3 of the snaps.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Now, maybe there's something he's dealing with medically, but he was not at all on the injury report. So,
No, I can't explain it away that way.
yeah. So just fathom that. You can't. So I don't have I have nothing to add other than it royally sucks. And just, again, continue the conversation here. Like,
He only ran 4 routes.
4. Think about
4.
that. In a game that they scored 28
Right.
points. Now, I get it. They were carving them on the ground. But still, like,
But early
you'd
on,
imagine
they were
4 routes
passing
per
more.
drive for
Yes.
Mark Andrews.
Right.
Yeah.
So I got nothing. I have nothing on it. I think this is one that I want to think about more. Is before I say, like, you still definitely have to start Mark Andrews. I mean, this is 2 out of 3 duds for Mark Andrews. Like, Travis Kelce had 7 fantasy points last night. I would commit a crime to get 7 fantasy points from Mark Andrews yesterday, right? I mean, 0 targets. Like, this is Mark Andrews. This is not some run. This is one of the best tight ends in the past half decade. I just have no words for it. If he's dealing with that, if there's a medical thing that, like, he's still fatigued and dealing with some of the stuff from the car accident, I feel terrible. But I can't explain it. This is way too good of a player to be playing 1/3 of the snaps.
Didn't help. Wow. Didn't help that Lamar Jackson only threw the ball 15 times, and it's in part because of what we talked about. You know, Stephania, they were absolutely crushing them on the ground. It wasn't just Lamar Jackson, who, by the way, 14 carries for 87 yards and a touchdown. The dude is just unreal. But Derrick Henry.
There's the
looked like
Derrick Henry
classic
I was
Derrick
looking
Henry.
for. This is the guy that I wanted to see at the start of the season when I felt like it was the resurgence of Derrick Henry. I just don't feel like they were using him that much. And you heard John Harbaugh say a couple of times, well, we're not going to run him into the ground. We don't want to overwork Derrick Henry. I was like, well, he's there and he's ready to work. So let's see it. And then that was vintage Derrick Henry, right? Like a freight train just running through the line, stiff-arming guys on his way to the end zone.
How does it?
Loved it.
What's the medical term for when guys seem to get stronger and faster as the game progresses? Like, how do you get more tired, but like
We call
you're
that
still
a Derrick Henry.
Is that what it is?
That's what we call it. We call it the Derrick Henry. Yeah.
I mean, it was really that to me was if you had any questions about could he do it,
Yeah.
those were answered last night. It was not that was not the issue. It was a question of how the offense was being played.
We'll talk about this more in the context of Devin Singletary on Thursday night. But, man, start your running backs against the Cowboys.
Oh,
they
I was just
cannot
gonna say that.
stop the run. And they also can't run the football as we move over to Dallas, Daniel.
Oh, man.
Like, zero interest in either of those backs right now.
Nope.
You want the number? I mean, just how bad it's been?
Yes. Please
He
get
had 2.2 fantasy points yesterday.
He only
2.2. That sounds terrible, right?
played 20% of the snaps.
So it's right. And part of it was the game script for sure, right? So Thursday night, they could definitely be leading and they could have a better, more effective running game. But they're 26th right now in rush attempts in the NFL. But neither of the backs is over 4 yards per carry. Rico's been the good one at 3.8, okay? They have 2 carries inside the 5 right now. One of them went to Zeke, one went to Dak Prescott. Obviously, no impact at all in the passing game for Zeke, pretty much. So, the Cowboys, they felt like the perfect team to use a mid-round pick on a back this past year. They opted not to. Right now, the early returns suggest they probably should. But until further notice, the backfield offers very little upside in Dallas, especially when they're playing teams that have a good offense, which they have for 3 straight weeks so far, and might have to play catch-up.
Wasn't Derrick Henry also linked to the Cowboys in the offseason? Was that a thing that maybe?
I think that was more fan fiction than it was.
Was it then real?
I mean, it was definitely fans wanted it, but
He trains there in the offseason.
I think the
down in
fans
Dallas,
still
so
want it for
he-
what
they
it's
sure
worth.
do. Yeah, they sure do. Yeah.
Well, to me, this was, if that's going to be the Cowboys recipe and they get down, somebody runs against, if I'm another team, I just would feel said that run defense was awful. I was not expecting that. you run against them, and they're going to have to score to catch up, and they did. And I don't know what happened. The Ravens sort of switched up what they were doing, which felt like they let Dallas catch up.
Yeah.
But it was then it had to be, all through the air pretty much. To which the answer is C.D. Lamb and.
Yeah. I guess Jake Ferguson. We were excited to see Jake Ferguson out
on target. Really good, yeah.
Jake Ferguson right now third among your tight ends in scoring so far this weekend. So good to have him back.
Yeah, love that.
Right behind Cole Kmet and ahead of Tyler Conklin, just like we all
No words. No words. No words.
That's so gross. All right, let's talk 49ers and Rams.
Okay.
Stephania's out for the next 5
Earmuffs. There's so many good things to talk about, though, for the Juwan Jennings side of this, Stephania. It sucks that you had such an unbelievable performance from that guy. Field, you called it coming into the week. I mean, you said this guy was a baller. I just hat tip to you on this one.
He's starting level wide receiver who had not yet had the chance to really start. I didn't think 46.5 fantasy points, the most in any game by any player this season, would take place. Happy for him, though. Really happy for Juwan Jennings until Deebo Samuel, which it could be. Deebo could play this week for all we know. But Kyle initially described it as a couple of weeks on Deebo. So obviously, if he is out this weekend, I guarantee you that Juwan Jennings will continue to be added and also will be started this weekend against the Patriots.
I think the bigger question is Brandon Ayuk.
It is, and talked
5 for 48.
The vibes are off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, the vibes are off.
He was targeted 10 times, and believe me, just like you watch the Lions.
Oh, I know.
I watched the 49ers, and a couple of times I was like, "What is going on?"
Is this Garrett Wilson in San Francisco?
It feels like it,
doesn't it?
But at least Garrett Wilson, there's an excuse because he hasn't played with Aaron Rodgers until now.
Yeah, well, that is a good point.
Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey had a good thing going until Brandon Ayuk was gone all preseason. It feels like it is off, and I put the onus of it largely on Brandon Ayuk.
I would agree.
It seems like he's out of position sometimes. There is a body language thing going on. And also the fatigue in the first couple games of the season. But if I'm Brock Purdy, to his credit, and I think what makes him work with Shanahan is he will follow the script and go through the progressions and do exactly what he is intended to do. But that script's going to move towards Juwan Jennings and off of Brandon Ayuk, and I would be doing that in a hurry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, a month off from training camp. It was a peculiar situation, to say the least. Ayuk kind of took some of the contract onus on himself. He better get it going because the way he played his cards resulted in a very strong deal, but he better prove he's worth it. Just a masterful day from Juwan Jennings, and Brock Purdy was exceptional as well for the 49ers. Jordan Mason was also really good again. It's Ayuk. We talked about him last week as a board bet, right? I just said, something doesn't look right to me yet.
Yep.
And it definitely did not look right again yesterday. So I think he would be a player that until he proves it once, I'm going to have a hard time saying, like, he's going to be in my lineup. Okay, I'm not trying to say bench Brandon Ayuk, but it's going to be, do I really expect top 5 performances from Brandon Ayuk with all these players out? The answer would be no until he shows it once.
Not for nothing, but that final play of the game,
with
all those laterals. Like, it had a chance.
It really did.
Yeah.
And if it had gone to Jennings instead of Ayuk, what might have happened?
Wow.
I can only imagine.
It was, there's a picture if you want to see it, but there's a frame that's frozen right there.
I've seen it.
It would have been like, that could have happened. And so on top of just the performance of yesterday, that was the final touch on the game. So for all of us who are 49ers fans, that was
tough. Speaking of what the 49ers do at the wide receiver spot without their stars, what about the Rams?
Here's the thing, Daniel. Right, you spend all week talking about 3 guys, and then the other guy does the work.
Tutu Atwell is the one that shows up. How does that happen?
Fantastic. Well, he had that one big play at the end. He's been there, been special teamer for them. But remember when Tutu Atwell first came on the scene, he got hurt early. He's very, very small. And so I think, his utilization has been very specific and in spots. And last night, it was just a big spot.
What's funny is, like, you look at the how each of these 4 players arrived to the Rams. Jordan Whittington was a 6th-round pick this year. Tyler Johnson is like a waiver claim who's like gone. He's been on like 4 different teams, 5 different teams now. DeMarcus Robinson, journeyman veteran. Tutu Atwell was like the 50th pick in the draft, 2nd-round pick. And it's like, of course, we don't talk about him at all. But yeah, here's what I'll just say. One thing was pretty clear in the pecking order. Like, I thought that it might be a little like Demarcus Robinson is going to play close to every snap for them. They're going to run the football like crazy right now. I thought Jordan Whittington would be on the field more than he was. He played just 22 snaps. So I think the preference, based off what we saw yesterday, is going to be to not play any of the Rams wide receivers, because assuming they're playing a team they feel like they can keep it reasonably close against, they're going to run the football into the absolute oblivion and try to
show. Yeah. Yep.
And that just talking about the running backs for the Rams, I understand people were frustrated. If you thought if you believed the Sean McVay chatter in the beginning where they were going to find ways to use Blake Corum, and he really liked Blake Corum.
Who's Blake Corum?
7 years from now. Yeah.
Exactly.
But that's also been his MO, is to talk about, sharing the workload and then not doing it. But I just thought that maybe there would be a lesson learned from last year when Kyren Williams was playing almost 100% of the snaps multiple weeks in a row and then ended up injured. And he has had injury issues. Now, to his credit, he's looked amazing. He's been in harm's way because he's touching the ball a ton, and there's no knock on him right now. I mean, he's outperforming the expectation, but I don't think it's changing. I roster Blake Corum in a few leagues. I'm still hanging on to him because I still think that injury exposure is a big thing for the Rams. And you're like you said, they're not going to move away from him. And they might find themselves in a position where all of a sudden they have to use him. But if you need that, you need to open up your roster for someone else, clearly go ahead and do it, because they're not going to actively insert him into the lineup.
I was holding my breath when he did that flip into the end zone.
Well, can we stop flipping into the end zone?
I'm fine with that.
I mean,
it just makes me nervous when I watch
somebody's going to do it and end up with an injury, and we'll be talking about this.
Yeah, it's tough. Right now, Kyren Williams is the only Ram that I am starting from this team. All right, Texans and Vikings. Guys, I did not give Sam Darnold enough credit coming into the season. Holy smokes, this dude. I get that Aaron Rodgers is also coming back here, but I just want to say comeback player of the year right now. Like, we've watched Aaron Rodgers be really good in the NFL before.
Maybe. What is coming? I always feel like comeback player of the year gets like mislabeled because it's like a guy who was a backup last year is coming back from what?
Yeah, maybe I should save that for like a J.K. Dobbins or somebody.
There's a good call. Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying because he wasn't hurt, it doesn't count. He needs to be an injury.
I usually think of as an injury player.
Yeah,
personally.
I do. I tend to defer to them. I mean, I know that somebody won it recently who
Geno Smith. Oh. It was like, he came back from being the second-string quarterback for a decade.
I know.
That's kind of, that's where.
From under a rock.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying, but then I would give the award to Kevin O'Connell.
Okay.
Because to me, I think what he has done
Coached
to
him up to
create
the
the environment
Yeah.
for Sam Darnold to succeed is as much credit as it is to Sam Darnold. Although teammates seem to love him and they're talking about everything he's doing to help them win. But keep an eye on him, getting his knee evaluated more today because of that weird-looking thing that happened where everyone held their collective breaths in Minnesota when he was down on the ground. And the fact that he's going for more testing today tells you he's not quite out of the woods.
I will just say this. I am not quite at the point where I'm saying, like, you got to be starting Sam Darnold. I think the most important thing for Sam is that we came into the season saying, like, can Justin Jefferson reach peak value with Sam Darnold under center? Through 3 games, the answer is a resounding yes. Back-to-back games with a touchdown. My hats go off to Sam Darnold.
Or is it, can Sam Darnold achieve peak Sam Darnold because he's playing with a wide receiver like Justin Jefferson?
Yeah.
It's a very, very fair question.
I think we're going to get a lot of questions, fairly or unfairly. Can I start Sam Darnold over Patrick Mahomes in Week 4?
Yeah, I probably am not. Like, I don't know. Like,
it's just going to happen.
That's going to happen. I don't know if I can actually walk the plank and do it myself. But I mean, I was with someone this morning. I was talking to somebody this morning who said, "Hey, like, I'm kicking myself because not that Patrick Mahomes was great last night, but I started Derek Carr over Patrick Mahomes."
Oh, this was
this is what fantasy.
No,
this is what fantasy football brings about. Is you think like, oh yeah, you got to start the guy who's red hot, and Darnold maybe this week's Derek Carr.
All right, don't love that. What about Jalen Naylor? This is a guy. He's what's his comp right now in the NFL?
All he does is score touchdowns to Chris Carter, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. He has touchdown in 3 straight games.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. All right. Vikings backfield, Stephania, I just want to give you a little bit of love here. You were totally right on Aaron Jones, at least to start the season. He has been unbelievable. 25.8 fantasy points. He's looked legit in this offense.
You know what makes me happier than anything? Number one, that he's healthy and performing well, and he's got this resurgence when he felt like he was,
Yeah.
I don't want to say dumped, but they were ready to move on for the Packers, and yet after talking about how important he was to the team. So I do think there was an emotional component there, and he really found a new home and a second chance with the Vikings. And I think when people wrote him off, and he said this is perhaps the most fun he's having in his career is playing there. And I just love to see that for the player, for a player who works that hard and who has done, done so much work to keep himself a viable running back 10 years into his career.
Who did the Vikings play this weekend? Packers. Spicy.
Yes, they play Green Bay.
Spicy meatballs left and right in that
how that
game.
one works
Yeah,
out.
that'll be fun.
On the other side of this one, C.J. Stroud was under duress the entire game, which
I think
meant
this is largely a throwaway.
Yeah.
You guys agree?
That's my big takeaway was this was a huge Stephon Diggs game because they needed to get the ball out quickly. Like, that's the way that I was
My
trying to
takeaway is the Vikings defense.
Looks great.
Brian Flores.
Brian Flores
Because if you look at
mastermind.
what they've been doing, I mean, they did it to the 49ers, which that wasn't the only one, but I just remember seeing Brock Purdy go up afterwards and go, like, that scheme was crazy. Like, there's not really a counter for it. It's so creative in terms of how they're setting themselves for every single team. What they did made C.J. Stroud not look like C.J. Stroud that we've come to know and love and appreciate. So my bigger takeaway was that was on the defense versus I'm reading anything into C.J. Stroud going forward.
I'll say, the weirdest part about this game was for me was at the end of the game, C.J. Stroud was pulled for Davis Mills.
Yep.
And they had their backup quarterback, but their starting receivers out there still. Very bizarre. That's just an aside. The Diggs versus Nico Collins debate is going to be a fun one for us to follow throughout
All year.
the season.
You and I do we have a board bet on
Yeah,
that?
it's a Nico
So
versus
fun.
Diggs, but it was like, Nico's the guy's got the better bet for, 100-plus yards and a touchdown. I think Stephon Diggs is going to lead them in targets and catches, and so far, Stephon Diggs does lead them in targets and catches. Nico Collins just has the better bet for an upside play each week. So it's a fun one to follow so far that has kind of played out as scripted.
Yeah, and Tank Dell, unfortunately, still the odd man out in this offense. 5 for 62. I mean, listen, he didn't crush you. You at least got 11.2 fantasy points.
If that's an option for a flat, at least you know that there's a possibility that he has some production every single week.
I would just say this. For those that believed there was a chance that you could squeeze 3 top 25 wide receivers, we are about 20% of the way through the fantasy season, and we're 0 for 3 on that.
Yeah.
So just, again, it's not a Tank Dell thing. I will fall back to this 1,000 times. It's really hard to throw one football over the course of 60 minutes to 3 separate players and keep all of them fantasy relevant.
Yep.
Regardless of how talented they are.
All right, let's talk Bears and Colts.
We have to.
No? That was good. That was good.
You know why? Because the two of us were on the Anthony Richardson train, and oh my gosh, I just wanted to give him a hug after the game, be like, you don't have to make those throws. You have to make better decisions.
Yeah.
Because the talent, I still believe in it. I still believe in the talent, but for fantasy, it's hurting me.
He looks bad throwing the football.
You can't die on the vine this quickly if you're all in on Anthony Richardson, all right? So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I've lost all of my hope. Obviously, he has played poorly in real life. Obviously. He's missing way too many throws, and his decision-making is bad. Mm-hmm. It needs to get better. Let's make the positive.
Okay.
We were talking about Patrick Mahomes earlier. Anthony Richardson has a top 3 quarterback finish already this season. We know that the upside of Anthony Richardson is still very close to the top of the heap, okay? I think the Colts would be wise to get him on the move as a runner more.
I was just going to say that. I think he could have run that touchdown in that he ended up throwing the pick for. And now they took away, when they got down, then it was like, okay, Jonathan Taylor, you're going to do your thing from now on. But he could have run that in, and we're having different conversation.
You know how when a backup quarterback or a young quarterback either comes in mid-game or starts a game, the announcers always talk about the same thing. Hey, watch the play caller, try to get this guy comfortable. You run a little bootleg, you throw the ball out to the tight end in the flat, a 5-yard throw that turns into an 8-yard gain. All right, you got some confidence going, right? Those aren't the plays that Anthony Richardson needs. I think the plays that he needs early in the game are, let's get Anthony Richardson on the move to run.
Yep.
Because he's still, right there at the most lethal of all quarterback rushers. So it sucks back-to-back weeks. It's really tough. And he's got to clean up decision-making in a major, major way. I'm hoping that the Colts allow him to run the football more. I'm trying to sort of make this happen on my own here. It's not a guarantee. But because of his play, the biggest faller in the ranks, I guess, other than potentially Richardson himself.
Pittman.
Michael Pittman Jr., he is not startable. He is
where I'm at.
completely unstartable right now.
Painful.
He's a great player. There's a reason
good.
why they paid him $24 million a year this offseason. But he can't be started.
So I think you're totally where I'm thinking about Anthony Richardson, because you know how they talk about running backs and sometimes the problem with the rotation. So we talk about the idea of rotating running backs so that you're preserving the legs and the health.
Yep.
But many running backs have to get in a groove. They have to get comfortable before you start really seeing them, find the holes the way they want to, make the cuts that they need to. Anthony Richardson may be one of those. And if you can get him functioning like that running back and get him in a groove, because it was interesting what he said. I don't know if you listened to what he said in his talking with the media afterwards, but he said sometimes he knows he's not making a good decision. He says, I see a guy and I get too excited and he's not placing the ball well, or he's throwing it with too much zip on it. And I've seen him in person and throw the ball come out of his hands and sail. It's hard. So it's like, I don't even know if they see it in practice field, because I bet it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's in that adrenaline, and then you get nervous because now you've made mistakes and then you're trying to fix it. I wonder if he can't get in a groove. And as fantasy managers, we would love it, right? Rack up some rushing yards for him. Let him get comfortable, and then let him start throwing the ball. And I bet you'd see a better there. Problem solved. You're welcome, Colts.
You're welcome. There you go. I'd love to see
won't
him
even
play with a
charge.
lead. Like if he had a lead and feel like he could settle into his spot rather than feeling like, that kind of like you had mentioned, that interception that he threw.
Right? It just they were up. It just was he's got to clean up decision making. What you are hoping for those of us that are still on the Anthony Richardson island, is you are hoping that a lot of bleep hits the fan early, like it has, and then it goes one of two ways. Sometimes it makes more, or you have a quick wake-up call.
Yep.
And not only does he, but the coaching staff does as well, to try to take off some of the burden from the player. And that's what we are hoping happens here with Anthony Richardson.
Well, on the other side of that, I feel like we have a quarterback that's very similar to that, unfortunately. Caleb Williams has had a rough start to the season, although he crushed it here in this one. 300.
Only rookie quarterback that's thrown a passing touchdown. So.
Yeah, which is
and
insane.
that was his first, right?
Yeah, he ended up with 2 yesterday.
Threw the ball 52 times. I'm not sure Chicago really wants him to throw the ball 52
Definitely
times.
don't, but for a rush defense that had been historically bad to begin the season at the Colts, the Bears couldn't get anything going on the ground yesterday. DeAndre Swift still remains a massive non-factor in fantasy right now. I'll say this on the Bears offense. So DeAndre Swift, super disappointing.
Not startable?
Not for me.
Here's what I would say. Not startable by choice, probably startable by necessity. Because
Just given the running back position.
I mean, it's like, Zamir White, guys like that are just busting left and right. Jalen Warren, guys that have you thought maybe could be fringe starters, not. So I would rather not, but I probably will find him in the top 25 because it's a running back. Caleb, there were some steps forward yesterday. Now they must figure out the offensive line play one way or the other. And Rome Odunze looked brilliant yesterday. He looked every bit the part of the 9th pick in the draft, and 11 targets was wonderful. Awesome.
It's funny, in the preseason, I had said I thought he was going to emerge potentially by the end of the season as wide receiver 1. I think it's being accelerated because of the absence of Keenan Allen, who I think when he returns, and hopefully that's sooner rather than later, I think he's going to provide this other safety blanket for Caleb Williams. I think it's going to really help him in terms of the decisions that he makes to have Keenan Allen back on the field. But that connection with Rome Odunze is heating up, and I thought we saw that yesterday.
Yeah, it was frustrating for me in all the leagues that I'm in where I don't have Cole Kmet, and I started a tight end I thought was going to be a top 5 guy. What do you do in these scenarios? I mean, other than just like we talked about earlier, you're allowed to be frustrated. That's really it.
Yeah, but you're allowed to be frustrated. But if I had told you going into the day yesterday, if you had asked me, hey, I've got Travis Kelce, and I'm so bummed out by how he's performed so far. What do you think about me starting? How far down the list would you have gotten before you thought of Cole Kmet?
Pretty darn far.
Right? You'd be going into the week, you'd be like, what about Hunter Henry coming off of a big game last week? That's the other thing here, is tight ends. Look at the tight ends that have balled so far this season. Isaiah Likely crushes it in week 1, non-factor since. Hunter Henry crushes it in week 2, 2 catches in week 3. There's not a lot of stickiness to that spot, which is the ostensible value of a guy like Travis Kelce or Sam Laporta when he is performing capably, but we have not gotten that so far this season.
I think that's the problem too this early in the season is, if you start chasing points at this particular position, tight end, because it's been so all over the place, you're going to miss every week because, Cole Kmet has a week like this, and then you're just as likely to get it done the following week. Yep. The consistency at this position, I think, is going to be harder to find than anywhere else.
Yeah, don't love that. Well, hopefully maybe we find some consistency in the next game we're talking about. Eagles and Saints.
Maybe.
Guys, Dallas got it.
Tight end, I know, but if you know, a lot of it came off of one big play.
It did come out. They had a big 60-yard catch. As a part of that, I do also want to ask you, Stephania, Devontae Smith got lit up in this one, left the game with a concussion.
That was scary.
That was a very scary helmet-to-helmet hit from a Saints defender. So hard it knocked his helmet off, in fact, and then he was lying
fine
there.
on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
So we saw Devontae going back into the locker room for evaluation again. Monitor this week.
To be clear, when I say fine, I mean like a monetary fine for that Saints defender for the hit. Yeah, so we've got two Eagles wide receivers that are big question marks for their game on Sunday against the Bucs. A.J. Brown obviously has not practiced in, for 4 straight sessions, so it's scary for Devontae, who was having a productive day prior to that. Goddard was exceptional. I mean, we thought with no A.J. Brown last week that you might see more of Dallas Goedert. You saw a little, but not a ton. Career day for him yesterday, at least up to this point in his career. And if they have neither of those receivers available next week, I mean, he would be my bet to lead the Eagles in targets. That's for sure against Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Saquon was amazing.
Saquon's just Saquon. What do you have to say about it?
Or Alvin Kamara, same thing. Like, these guys are just elite workhorse running backs right now that if we were redrafting, they'd both probably be in the conversation for the first 5 picks in the entire draft.
I was telling Field this yesterday that I think I'm going to have a theme at the end of the year. And there's a long way to go for the season, but I am just loving these running backs who are having a second surge in their career.
Yes, they
or
are.
Maybe we're written off for people questioning the value of paying them. We saw how difficult it was with Saquon. The Giants were willing to let him go, and look what he is doing. I love it. I love seeing Alvin Kamara look like the original Alvin Kamara.
Looks great.
And then guys like Aaron Jones, who aren't maybe going to be leading the leaderboard every single week, but they are incredibly productive, and they're having this second opportunity. It's great.
Yeah.
Great story.
24 touches a game for Alvin Kamara so far. Just
That's
ridiculous
unreal.
workload. And keep in mind, they blew out teams in the first 2 weeks, so it could have been more like it was yesterday when he had a season-high 29.
I was pumped to see Chris Olave get in the end zone, guys. 6 for 86 and a touchdown. This is the Chris Olave that you were expecting. When the team put up like 40 points each of the last 2 weeks, you assumed that this would have been the stat line in that game, not in this one where it was such a low-scoring game. Unfortunately,
Shaheed 0.
Yeah, it came at the expense of Rashid Shaheed. Shaheed had one. He burned the corner deep on one play. Derek Carr was getting hit, kind of falling backwards. Could have been a touchdown there, but that play just didn't quite manifest itself in the same way, unfortunately. Let's talk Giants and Browns.
Yeah.
Another wide receiver.
Yeah.
Another wide receiver that's just amazing. Guys, Malik Nabers.
Nabers. And you know what? It's not even that he's, obviously he was going to be the lead in targets for the Giants. He was going to be the standout. It's the way he's making the catches that he's making because there are other wide receivers who are not making those catches. He had that one where he practically did a full turn in the end zone to bring that ball in. He's walking the sidelines, toe tapping to make the catch. These are plays that might not be made by anyone else. And when you have that kind of confidence in that receiver who's already going to be your number one target, I think it's only going to get bigger.
Yeah, he looks fantastic.
On top of the 12 targets, he had 2 carries. We talked about this. He also
They're literally trying to put the ball in his hands as much as possible.
all we asked for, and I give Brian Daboll a ton of credit for doing exactly that. He's an absolute star in the making. Just a complete faceplant by the Browns yesterday. They should be ashamed of themselves of that terrible effort. Deshaun Watson looks like one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL.
So bad.
Not that we're starting him, but Amari Cooper at least maybe kind of got going yesterday. I mean, the first play of the game for the Browns after they recover the fumble, they end up, they score a touchdown, a 24-yard catch for Amari Cooper. He looked better yesterday. It was garbage time. Who cares? The Browns might be in a lot of garbage time this year with the way they played yesterday.
I hadn't even walked out. FF Now had just finished. I had pulled up Red Zone on my phone, and already the Giants had fumbled on the kickoff, and there was an Amari Cooper touchdown within like the first 13 seconds of the game or something.
Unbelievable that could happen. The Browns are a disaster right now. I really feel bad for our great colleague, Keith Lipscomb, because it's deja vu all over again. And I think that we are looking at the worst trade in the history of my lifetime and probably the history of the NFL. I always sort of stop short of saying that when.
Have you looked at the Bryce Young trade?
This one might be worse.
Might be worse, you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I think they're close.
It's a conversation, but, Bryce Young.
If you put all the
always-
context around it, the Browns win.
Yeah, I guess in this case, do they win or they lose?
I mean, win in the
Yes.
worst.
Yeah.
In
Win
the
in the worst
category
way.
of the worst.
Anyways,
way.
it's really, really bad, and this was just a tough game to watch.
Yeah. Don't love either of these running backs, too. We were talking about, do you want Jerome Ford or Deontay Foreman in this one? And honestly, I don't want either one of them.
Yeah, I prefer not. Foreman, I
Yeah.
thought could have a busier day, but they fell behind to the freaking New York Giants, and he barely played.
That's the problem too. If nothing else is working, like nobody's gonna let you. Your run game isn't gonna have a chance.
When Daniel Jones outperforms you at the quarterback spot.
By a lot.
Yeah. And that's not, don't mean it to be a shot against Daniel Jones, but when you're Deshaun Watson getting paid what you get paid, you should be doing a lot better than
Sounds a little risky to say this, but the Raiders could be an interesting streaming defense this week against the Browns. I know that sounds terrible coming off of what we'll talk about in just a few minutes.
We'll get into that. The only other person I would have to talk about here, do you think Wan'Dale Robinson is worth a potential ad, or you can look at him as a
deeper league for sure. It's clearly the Malik Nabers show, but it's him and then it's Wan'Dale. He's fun. He's a fun guy to watch. Second round pick as well. Super shifty out of the slot. Wan'Dale has my interest peaked in a 12-team or larger league for sure.
I'm with you on that. 8 targets, 7 receptions for 61 yards, especially as we get towards bye week starting in week 5. By the way, you mentioned this. I didn't realize the Lions are one of the teams that have a week 5 bye week. Can we please outlaw bye weeks before week 7?
Get rid of all.
That's why I said the Rams would like a word because they get a bye in week 6, and they are probably like, please.
Please.
What teams have a bye besides the Lions?
Can we should make bye weeks tradable, like in fantasy football. It's can we trade you,
You know
a
what?
bye
That
week?
would actually really be interesting as part of trades because I wonder if you would allow. Obviously, it would never
It'd mess
happen
with
because
scheduling.
of scheduling and
Yeah,
all of
but-
that. But how, if you're a team like the Rams, where you would love to have a bye week early because it's one less week that counts against your guys who are on IR, for example, and there are ways you could find it advantageous to take advantage of that early bye. That would be a fun trade.
That would be fun. That would be fun. Maybe we just do 2 bye weeks.
We do a bye plus one of your backup running backs.
Honestly, that would work for me. That would work for me. All right. Let's talk about the Dolphins and the Seahawks in this one, and very difficult for everyone on the Dolphins receiving core. Field.
I was just going to start with Skylar Thompson.
want to start with Skylar?
Yeah, because what's going to happen going forward, I think we have a legit question here because all of these players on the Dolphins offense, it's sort of contingent on who's throwing them the ball. Skylar Thompson left with what was called a chest injury at the time. McDaniel afterwards said it was a rib injury that was pretty painful. They would be evaluating him today, but there's very good chance that he's not available. Obviously, Tua is on IR, so no matter what the decision is, he's not available. Go.
So it's Tim Boyle who stepped in yesterday. Tyler Huntley on the roster as well. If Tim Boyle is announced as the starter, I will be lower on Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle than probably all my colleagues here. It'd be a stay away.
Jalen Waddle is, at this point, I feel like he's like Michael Pittman Jr. He's a guy that has so much talent, but I just
Is
can't put him in
Tyreek
my
Hill that
fantasy
much
league.
different? Yes, because he could turn one big play or one short play into a big play. They play the Titans next week, who, for all the stuff they haven't done on offense, have been more competent on defense. They weren't great yesterday, but it's for an offense that is as fun to watch with Tua under center. It's about that's a low functioning offense yesterday. Devon Achane got trapped as a result of it. All of them did. It was it's a total changeup. If you've ever wondered why, if Tua ever has to go back to the negotiating table for a contract, which he just got one, so he won't, but he'll just say, play the tape.
Yeah.
When I'm not there. It sucks. Yeah.
I feel like it's panic time if you have either one of those wide receivers trying to figure out what you're going to do moving forward for the next couple of weeks, because it does not feel like the future is bright, unfortunately. For the Seahawks, DK Metcalf, again, what is it?
Yeah.
Been awesome. Zach Charbonnet was awesome as well. Charbonnet has touched on every game this season. DK goes over 100 yards for the second straight week. Boom start for DK. It's great to see. And they play the Lions next Monday night, so we'll talk about that, the running back spot more in depth, both because of the extra day and the possibility of Kenneth Walker the third returning, but also the matchup. But Zach Charbonnet has been, one of the fantasy values so far through the first 3 weeks of the season, especially the last 2.
If nothing else, it gives the Seahawks some comfort if there's any question about Kenneth Walker's health status, that Zach Charbonnet is going to get the job done.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, no, absolutely. You can definitely trust him if there is no Ken Walker. I don't really have a whole lot else to say. Kind of a down day for JSN, and I mean, it just sort of is what it is.
Yeah.
Nothing to it. All right. Panthers and Raiders. Guys, first off, Andy Dalton. Does Andy Dalton
Welcome
count as
back
comeback
to
player of
the
the year, or
NFL?
again, because he was benched, it did
No.
not count that way? All right. Well, Andy Dalton made this offense look more than competent
It looked great.
I
against
think it
the
accomplished a goal, right? Got Deontay Johnson involved. Got
Very
everybody. Chuba Hubbard, it looked like, okay.
Even Adam
Here we are.
Thielen could have been a flex play if you needed him in this one. Like Andy Dalton got
Where
the
he
ball
got
to
hurt,
everybody.
but yeah.
Yes.
You know what I'd say is that it validated what the Panthers did this weekend, which on the surface seemed completely insane, right? Like, it's a you problem. It's not a Bryce Young problem. I'm not going to shut the light off entirely on Bryce Young as a player. I think I'm pretty close to doing so with the Panthers. I'd be surprised if he has like a rebirth there. But I think what this told us, and the Panthers, you can't come out and say this with words. You can do so with actions. But you can't say, hey, the biggest problem right now is not the roster around the quarterback, it's the quarterback himself. And not that the Raiders or the 1985 Bears or something, but Andy Dalton got the ball out efficiently and effectively. The offensive line has been okay. It's been fine this season. They ran the football so much better. They prioritized their playmakers, and they had the capacity to do so. Deontay Johnson had a career high in fantasy points yesterday
And
receiving yards. Like, if I had told you, like, I thought that Deontay Johnson would be better. If I had told you that he would have had a career high in fantasy points and receiving yards, you would have thought I was probably pretty close to insane. He had a 37.8 target share. That's wonderful. That's huge for Deontay. So, really, 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 really good day for the Panthers offense. Big boost in value for Deontay Johnson. If Adam Thielen is out because of that hamstring injury, probably only, I don't know that it boosts the value more for Deontay Johnson. It probably just creates a bit more certainty that he should be a very, very involved player for the Panthers in Week 4.
Well, definitely didn't look great when it happened for Adam Thielen. He grabs at the back of his hamstring. He was making, for those who might not have seen it, it was like he was stretching to get into the end zone, took this really long stride, immediately went down, grabbed his right hamstring. It's sort of the universal sign that something feels like it pulled there. He told reporters in the locker room that he couldn't keep going, but he was hopeful that it's not too bad. Player knows right away that they can't keep going. That's usually something that's significant enough that is going to cause them to miss some time. He said he was getting an MRI today. I would just be planning on Adam Thielen not likely playing this week. So what that does in terms of pass catchers, I mean, even more targets to Deontay Johnson.
Maybe a little Xavier Legette action.
Maybe.
Played some
Maybe we'll see
yesterday.
that.
Jonathan Mingo, and just the entire operation looked much, much more functional.
And by the way, like I was looking ahead to who they play because I was like, let's just see what we think about this. The Bengals, the Bears, the Falcons, the Commanders, and then the Broncos.
Bench games there for Andy Dalton, right?
Yeah.
He was
Well, that helps when you played for a lot of teams.
Yeah.
But I mean, those are all teams that I think the offense that I saw yesterday
be fine
would
against.
be fine against.
Better days definitely upon us here for Carolina. Happy for them because it was a tough week down there in Charlotte, to be clear. And so a very, very, very strong response from Andy Dalton, professional quarterback.
That's right.
Professional quarterback.
Boy, just looking back at the Bryce Young trade, they still have a pick that they have to give to the Chicago Bears on top of everything they've sent to them already. Wow. DJ Moore, Darnell Wright, Tyreek Stevenson, Caleb Williams, and a 2025
That's a lot.
second-rounder.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot. Yeah.
Field, Zamir White's going to my bench. I don't think I can drop him given the state of the running back spot, but like there's no way. We said if you can't do it against the Panthers, then it's like, what are you going to, how do I feel comfortable starting you in fantasy?
And that team just has clearly become tough to trust, have the Raiders, right? They've been duds in 2 of 3 games, and they go on the road and beat Baltimore when down by 10, and Gardner Minshew has a masterful performance, and Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers look like absolute rock stars. Zamir White, no. I would not start either Raiders running back until further notice, and this might be a big fat running back dead zone. I think that Devontae Adams is a confusing player, not because of him, but because the usage is like the box score is going to be confusing week in and week out. He's an absolute rock superstar, but 4 catches for 40 yards yesterday, like not his fault. He can't throw the passes and catch them. But yeah, that's just a perplexing offense.
It made me think of Giselle. I was just thinking of Giselle when you said that.
Can't throw in. Yeah.
All right, let's move on. We got 7 minutes, 6 minutes left. We'll see how many games we can get to.
We can go overtime.
Packers and Titans. Packers and Titans, Malik Willis. Holy smokes.
This is actually an easy one to get to, though, right?
Yeah.
Because there's only one player that until Jordan Love returns, you feel confident starting. Right? Malik Willis was unbelievable yesterday. Like, I was talking about this with a friend, a colleague of ours last night, about like the difference when you're just watching games. It's like, obviously personnel is going to vary from team to team, but it really feels like the gap between the good offensive coaches and the bad offensive coaches is widening by the year. Mm-hmm. The Packers have a great one in Matt LaFleur, a great one who is totally maximizing Malik Willis, who they've had on Green Bay's roster for like 3.5 weeks.
I thought that this is the conversation. The Kevin O'Connells, the Matt LaFleurs, these people who are taking quarterbacks who have struggled elsewhere or been, left for deceased elsewhere. And then you say, okay, we're going to find the way to make the offense work with your strengths and have success with all the tools around you. And then we're gonna play that way. And Matt LaFleur has been masterful.
Why do they have to be 2 NFC North quarterbacks?
I know.
Come on, jeez. Yeah. I was not expecting this from the Green Bay Packers going
really
2-0 with Malik Willis. I mean, he has looked the part to be able to help them get these dubs until Jordan Love is able to come back, which is all you can ask for.
And how smart is that? Because Jordan Love, I believe, will be back this coming week. All the signs point there. He's been more involved in practice.
Love to hear that.
Packers. This could be a nice game for him to come back. But they've been able. How much more confident are you in allowing your quarterback? That might have been a helpful factor in the decision. I'm not saying Jordan Love was totally healthy and ready to go. We don't know that. We're not there. And they may have had this plan for him to hit this week 4, from the outset. But it allows you the luxury of being able to say, we're going to hold tight. We're going to take that extra time. We're not desperate to get you back in the lineup because we can't function without you.
Starting 2-1 when you've got Malik Willis for 2 of those games. And the only loss came actually with Jordan Love under center against the Eagles in week 1.
Yeah, week 1 down in Brazil. If you're looking at the box score and saying like, dude, Josh Jacobs got outscored by Emmanuel Wilson. I thought yesterday was more about the fact that they were in control of this game for a lot of it. They have been riding Josh Jacobs into the ground rather than doing that for a third straight week in a game that you are very much in control of. Let Wilson, who they think is a very competent RB2, sure looks the part that way, let him take some of the burden off of Josh Jacobs. And again, if Jordan Love is unavailable next week, I am not starting a Packers receiver.
Same.
There's the rule for as well as Malik Willis played yesterday. 13 total completions, just not going to cut it when you have that many different wide receivers that you can rely on.
Got to be honest, I don't really want to start anyone from the Tennessee Titans right now. It's just tough.
Yeah, here's what I'm monitoring, though, from Tennessee. The running backs are still kind of complicated. A dud day for Tony Pollard, just 5.2 fantasy points. DeAndre Hopkins did look a lot better yesterday. He played a lot more. He had 19.3 fantasy points, did D-Hop. The first 2 weeks, he was treated like a guy who suffered a knee
injury.
Yeah. So no surprise that they're starting to rely upon him more. Calvin Ridley was quiet for much of yesterday as well. Yeah. But he's a Jekyll and Hyde player. Mm-hmm. Like, I think we kind of know that by now about him. And this offense, they're just a disaster. They're the only team, or they are potentially the only team in the AFC after tonight that has no wins. If the Jaguars and the Bengals win, they'll be the only winless team left in the entire league.
Wow.
Which that's going to require a pair, of wins tonight. But still, it's a mess right now for Tennessee. Will Levis was once again very bad, very careless. Took a ton of sacks, interceptions, and he got pick 6 by Jair Alexander. Really bad. Just not a good day for the Titans offense, and super disappointing. But if there's hope, it's maybe D-Hop is going to be a full-time player, and if he is, that'll make him a potential wide receiver 3 candidate.
Gosh, that still doesn't feel good in this offense. But if you need someone, again, as we're getting closer to bye weeks, he's someone that you could potentially count on. Let's talk Chargers and Steelers. Stephania, let's start with Justin Herbert. Obviously, you were worried about him coming into this game dealing with a high ankle sprain, I believe it was.
Yeah. You know what? There's a reason that no other quarterbacks have come back within 1 week to play following a high ankle sprain. It's impossible to move. You saw that. He could not move. And again, this is, to me, the question of at what point Do you go from, and I tweeted this yesterday, like, I admire the courage. I admire the player who wants to be out there with his guys. But at what point does the decision-making and the result that you ended up with, which was Justin Herbert aggravating this high right ankle sprain and now potentially costing himself more time. Now, he says he hopes to play this coming week, but you don't want another episode like what you just saw. So we shall see. But at what point is that great? It's great, you know, you're validating amongst the guys that you want to be out there for them. And Justin Herbert has played through multiple injuries before, things that you wouldn't expect a quarterback to play through. So I understand why there's this belief that he will always attempt to play through, but I just think maybe that decision shouldn't be up to him. Interestingly, Derwin James in the locker room afterwards said he was about 40%, 35%. It was great to see him go out there. And I was like, when your own teammates know that that's about what you are percent of yourself, the risk of re-injury, when all it's going to take is exactly what happened. If pocket collapses, you get caught between two defenders, twist your ankle again. We'll see. And Herbert said himself he was getting sore throughout the game, and then that hit that knocked him out, he could really start to feel it. So.
Chargers have a Week 5 bye for what it's worth. I guess they're very excited about it. Yeah. So we'll see how that works out.
This was the most predictable fantasy game of the weekend, though.
Yes. I'm totally with you.
Both teams are going to run the crap out of the ball. If you start a receiver, you're going to have to get fortunate, which if you started Quentin Johnston, he turned half of his catches into touchdowns. He had 2 catches. One of them was a score. Again, I'm just happy
busted
for the
coverage,
kid now.
Right?
Happy for him.
Happy for the kid. Yeah, wide busted coverage. So it was a grinded out game mostly. My thoughts, here would be my stance on the two teams, is that the J.K. Dobbins, we talked about this throughout the week, potential sell high candidate, right? Because of the fact that, like, he was not going to average 9.9 yards per carry. It's going to be much more difficult if Justin Herbert does now miss some time. They play the Chiefs next week, a game they might be playing from behind in. Other than J.K. Dobbins, though, there's no total set-it-and-forget-it Chargers player on offense.
Yep.
For the Steelers, it's probably Najee Harris that you're most excited about. And the tone in my voice there should tell you how excited you actually are. The Steelers, until further notice, are going to play football exactly how they have played for the first 3 games.
Yeah.
They've been by far the most dominant defense in the entire NFL.
Yep.
They play someone legit next week. Who do they play next week? I'm sorry.
Steelers? I'll pull it up. I got it right here.
I was like thinking to myself, like, it might be a little tougher next week, but the Steelers want to win every game. Oh, they play the Colts. Excuse me. All right, so a team that's 1-2. The Steelers want to go into that game next week and totally mystify Anthony Richardson, and they might do that.
It might not be too hard.
Yes. So the point is that if you're looking for, like, well, can George Pickens get it going? Of course, he's a really talented player, but it's not him necessarily. It's going to be that they might throw the ball 17 times in a game.
Yeah. I mean, if that happens, I feel like what you just mentioned, it really is the Najee Harris show, because Jaylen Warren does not feel like a guy that is going to be utilized in this backfield the way that he was last year.
Well, not only that, but after the game, Mike Tomlin, you see what happened? He said after the game, like, there might be something up there health-wise.
Yeah.
Really?
So he didn't get much more specific. You know, Mike,
that.
he's obviously he's as transparent as it comes with the coaches. So he legitimately seemed to not know.
Okay.
But I did see a tweet from a Brooke Pryor basically indicating that, like, he took him out of the game. We're going to monitor that one. So we might find out that he's dealing with something. Of course, he had that hamstring in the preseason.
Yep. And had fully recovered from that, but who knows? You know how these things go. Sometimes they can recur. So there may have been something else. Here's my question. Russell Wilson says he's feeling better. His calf is getting better.
No way.
He'll be a great backup quarterback.
Exactly. That's where I'm at.
But people might be wondering because, it certainly, he had won the starting job, had he not? Was it? Or that's how
rumor.
He signed first. So he won the
Yes. Yes.
That's how it appeared until there was the calf issue. But if people were wondering, remember he traveled the first week, and there was the whole question. Remember he goes
to Atlanta.
Whether it was a real question or more of a question for the entertainment value. There was a conversation about it. I don't think Justin Fields is going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, at least unless this thing implodes. But
right.
with the way they're playing on defense right now, and feel-good stories are fun, and Justin Fields is a feel-good story right now.
Dude,
exactly.
absolutely. The Bears
And
very quick to move on.
he at
And
least can run.
yes, absolutely. He can utilize his legs, and he is one of the quarterbacks that will utilize his legs. He's got some arm talent as well. Sometimes makes some poor decisions, but like when he's on, he can look really good given the state of the QB spot. If you needed to play him when bye weeks come up, I think that's totally fine for you to be able to do with Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Let's talk Bucs and Broncos. Sorry
Big
to all
win
the
for
Buccaneers fans out there. This is
Dude, huge win for Denver, though. Like, I got to be honest. I thought they might have been they looked terrible in the first 2 weeks offensively.
yes.
Much more functional yesterday. Let's start in Tampa, though, just because there are more fantasy relevant players.
Happened?
Mike Evans got
Pat Surtain.
Well,
Like,
that
and
we
we
knew
knew that was
coming.
going to happen.
Yeah, we
right?
knew that was coming.
And as a part of that, we thought Chris Godwin could do things again, and it's exactly what happened for us like the second week in a row.
But it just felt like they got smothered.
Yes.
In a way, the entire Buccaneers.
Pass catchers, I think, exactly how we expected to play out, but I think there is at least a question to ask. Are we seeing a potential changing of the guard with Bucky Irving and Rashad White in that backfield?
All right, so the snaps would tell you no. It was 41 snaps for Rashad White, 19 for Bucky Irving.
What does the eye test tell you?
The eye test would tell you that they need to be using Bucky Irving more.
Yes.
And he's just been a better runner. 9 carries for 70 yards versus 6 carries for 17 yards for Rashad White, who I told you earlier in the show went 10 carries for 18 yards against the Lions.
Yep.
Rashad White's a capable pass catcher. He had 5 catches yesterday for 18 yards. I don't think he's a particularly good runner. I think he's fine. He averaged like 3.6 yards per carry. I don't think, and Bucky Irving behind the same offensive line with like even more volume, has been a better runner. So I think Rashad White's he's an adequate runner and a capable receiver. I think if you told me by midseason this was closer to one of these backfield splits that we see around the league, whether it's what we thought Pittsburgh was going to be, what we see at times all over the place, I would not be surprised at all. I'm on alert here.
We had talked coming into the season, the reason why Rashad White looked so good last year was because he was second in touches in the NFL, only behind Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, with Bucky Irving coming in, that wasn't going to be the case again this year. So without that huge volume where they just keep going to him, even if he's inefficient, he's really fallen down the running back ranks. Now, we still have the spot where it's like running back 18 through 30 just doesn't feel good.
Dead zone for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that Irving is an interesting speculative ad right now, even if you don't lean on him yet. Like, if you told me a backfield could flip at midseason, this is certainly amongst the backfields that are most likely to flip.
Yeah. What about on the other side? Looking at
Stay away,
this,
man.
Yeah.
Jeez, stay a freak away.
I want no part
nothing.
of the Broncos backfield. Zero.
Who was the best rusher on the Broncos yesterday?
Was it Bo Nix?
Well, he had the most fantasy points. He did have, 2 rushing touchdowns for Bo Nix yesterday. Tyler Beatty.
Oh, gosh.
Former 6th-round pick from Mizzou of the Ravens, who was elevated from the practice squad.
That doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel. How did they score so many points? What did they do?
Stay away. A lot of field goals as well.
Yep.
But stay away.
Don't feel good.
Stay away. Stay away right now from the Broncos at all costs. Cortland Sutton is a totally useful player, but they're confusing. So the backfield has a practice squatter leading them in rushing yards. Remember Devon Villay, who had 12 targets in week 1 for the Broncos? He misses week 2 because he was hurt. Comes back week 3, off the injury report entirely, and he gets scratched yesterday. Like, they're confusing. Again, I'm not saying we're talking about like Justin Jefferson getting benched, but just like 12 targets in week 1, and 2 weeks later, when fully healthy, off the field entirely.
It's crazy.
Crazy.
This is one of those offenses that you guys are totally right. Just if I can avoid it altogether.
Yeah, hold my nose.
Yeah.
You mentioned field goals, and I just want to give a shout out to Brandon Aubrey saving people's teams.
Oh my God, he's the Cowboys' best player.
He's the Cowboys' best player. He is now usurped Justin Tucker, and we saw that face to face yesterday, and that's why I bring it up. 65-yard field goal. Brandon Aubrey hits. He is making these consistently. The Cowboys know they can go to him for that. And yesterday was like a down day for him because I think he had 11 fantasy points. Yeah. You know, compared to whatever he did, it was less than usual. And Justin Tucker is now 0-for-3 in all his field goal attempts, 50 yards or greater this season. So I think we have seen the passing of the torch for the number 1 kicker in the league, and it's Brandon Aubrey, and it's not close.
He's unreal. Scored 50 points. 50 points already this season?
Believe me, he has saved me. And so you guys know I was on the Brandon Aubrey train.
Of course you were.
And I am telling you that I have 1 weeks. So if you have a kicker, this is going to be my pitch. If you have a kicker kicking position in your league, and you're try and get him. Try and trade him if you're really if trade for him if you are just say you're stacked at wide receiver, but you thought it was okay to take a kicker, even who we thought was a good kicker like Jake Moody. Now is the time to try and trade for Brandon Aubrey. If you get to fantasy playoffs, he could be the difference maker.
Yeah, I would love to see. I want to know how often. Hopefully, he shows up on that FF Now panel where we talk about most traded or added players like we do. I would love to see that on there.
Totally.
As a reminder, 2 Monday Night Football games tonight. Jacksonville is taking on Buffalo at 7:30 Eastern Time. Washington is taking on Cincinnati at 8:15 p.m. So you're going to have to dual screen it here. But we got 4 more teams yet to roll tonight. Can't wait to be able to recap both of those.
Yeah, the good news is I don't think we have any big question marks for injuries coming into tonight's game. Off the top of my head,
it feels like T. Higgins is going to play. The question is, ideally, you rolled with someone else that was able to get you more fantasy points because, of course, that means he's going to score 35 points tonight is how it's going to work, right?
Exactly.
That's it.
Totally.
All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thank you for watching Fantasy Focus Football, presented by NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. Don't forget to love each other, be kind to yourself, and have a ton of fun watching Monday Night Football. We'll see you guys here tomorrow for a Monday Night Football recap and a big dive into the waiver wire.
Let's go.